Good morning, friends. I'm Michelle Evans, the Domestic Trades Manager here at Prairie, and we're in the Golden Eagle Garden this morning. It is just at our frost-free date. Typically in Indiana, we look at Mother's Day weekend, and Mother's Day is a little early this year. So our gardens have not been planted yet because of that and because of all the rain we've had this year. And we've got more rain coming this afternoon. You can see it's a little dreary and overcast today, but hopefully next week as the weather warms up and hopefully we have a few dry days, we'll start tilling the gardens and getting things planted. Right now what we've got in here is a lot of our perennials. I was just checking out the asparagus bed, and if you look, we've got a lot of little shoots through here. We've been eating a lot of asparagus, but it will keep coming up, and we will keep picking it until the stalks start getting as small as your little finger. I usually tell our staff, if it's as small as your little finger, leave it. We'll let it grow up to ferns, and that will feed those crowns, those roots of the asparagus plant for the rest of the year, so that next spring we'll have lots more asparagus. We've also got horseradish coming up, and horseradish is one that you want to be careful to plant in your garden because it will be there forever if you plant horseradish. It's a great plant, but you can see it's, well, I know it's spread beyond where it originally was planted. I heard a story once of an old home site that became a subdivision. They took off some of the topsoil, and even with clearing it off and all the groundwork that happened with the subdivision, the horseradish from that old home site still came up. So it's an amazing plant. We've got some things that came up on their own this year, like our lettuce. Some of our lettuce self-seeded from last year. So you can see this little patch that we've fenced off a little bit. And our speckled lettuce from last year self-seeded and has come back. And so we're just gonna let it go. That was one thing that German Americans did a lot, figuring that if plants wanted to be where they were, and if they moved around the garden, to a certain extent that was okay. And so we do the same. So we've got a patch of lettuce here. That may not be exactly what was on our garden plan for this year, but that's where it is. And so we'll let it grow until the lettuce is gone and we plant something else there. We've got lots of other perennials in here. Our thyme is starting to green up, and so we'll be using that in some of our recipes. So don't look at some of your perennials and say, oh, it's dead and brown, and so I'm going to pull it up and get rid of it. Give it time this time of year. Some things like your lavender may take a little more time until the weather warms up and it starts to green up. So don't be discouraged if it looks like this. In another month, it's going to be covered with green, and you won't even see that brown part. Our walking onions are always doing well. If you've been out here in the summer, you may have seen the tops on them. And one of the ways that they have this name of walking onion is they will send up a shoot that has little bulblets on top. And if you leave them, they will fall over and walk around your garden. If we look a little over to the left there, you can see two that have walked outside of the patch. And so we will move those back in with all their friends and keep them together. This is a great perennial onion that never gets a big bulb like we think about in the grocery store, but think about it more like a green onion. So you'll have these year-round, year to year, if you keep a patch like this. We've also been using a lot of rhubarb, and you can see our rhubarb is doing really well. One of the things we watch for here, and the staff at the Golden Eagle has been really good about it, is picking off the flower buds when it starts to bolt. With any plant decides it's going to send up flowers and seeds, that's the whole purpose of that plant, is to produce seeds. And so a lot of times if we let it go to seed, to mature seed, the plant will stop producing. Think about your green beans. We keep picking those. If we let that first flush of green beans go to dry beans, the vine's going to say, okay, I did my job, I'm done. But we keep picking them, which then the plant wants to keep producing more seed. If we're going to pick some of this rhubarb, we look for big fat ones, and Rhubarb is a plant that we don't cut, we pull. So I put my thumb right on it. If it's as wide as my thumb, I know it's big enough to use. Now the tops of the rhubarb, the leaves, are not good for us, a little bit toxic. The stems are fine. So a lot of times we will put the leaves back down as mulch around the plant to help with the weeds around the rhubarb. But rhubarb is another one that if you take care of this plant, it's going to last you a lifetime. And it's a great plant to have around, especially if you love rhubarb pie, which we've been having some of this spring. So it's a wonderful thing. If we look at the back of the garden here, over to the right, we've got our elderberries coming on, and staff has fenced it off because we've had some new plants come up, and we'll let those babies just keep growing, so we'll have more elderberries this year if we can feed the birds to them. Our hop vines have been strung, so they'll start climbing up, and especially as we get warmer weather and things really take off. But this garden may look a little sad right now. We're being careful not to walk in it when it's super wet like this, because that compacts the soil. So we want to wait till it dries out. If you pick up a clump of dirt and squeeze it in your hand and it stays in that ball, it's too wet to be in your garden. If you can then tap that clump and it kind of crumbles apart, you know that soil's dried out enough that you can work in it. But otherwise, you risk damaging your soil by getting in it too early.
How many gardens do we have here?
We have, let's see, we've got 5 gardens in Prairie Town. We've got gardens out at Civil War Journey. We've got a garden at Lenape. We've got a garden at the Connor House. So we've got gardens spread out throughout the grounds. We have heirlooms in all those gardens. We do a lot of research to try and find the plants that are appropriate for the time periods, and also for the region, particularly in Prairie Town, the region that people came from. So with our composite biographies of our characters in Prairie Town, well, here in the Golden Eagle, the Zimmermans are portrayed as being Pennsylvania German, Pennsylvania Dutch. And so we look specifically for varieties that were used by Pennsylvania Dutch, varieties that came from Pennsylvania, and so we've done the research to find those varieties. Sometimes those are things that we can go online to a seed catalog and purchase. In some instances, those are plants that we have to save the seed from because it's not commercially available. The red limas that you may have seen growing in this garden before are one of those that we found a seed source from an Amish lady in Pennsylvania and saved seed for a few years before we had enough that we could actually taste the seeds, cook them and try them out. And then we've gone on to produce enough that in 1 year we actually served it at Hearthside as one of our side dishes. So it's a labor of love, but we try our best to have things that are appropriate for our time periods in our gardens.
Someone asked, what do you get most excited about growing?
What do I get most excited about growing? I think seeing anything, but as someone, if we've got new varieties that we're trying for the first time, it's always exciting. Some things are just old friends, and it's good to see them back every year. And I love hearing our guest stories about plants. Let's go look at the lovage real quick. This is one of my favorite plant stories from a guest. So lovage is kind of a perennial celery. And it's got, think of celery with a little bit of spice to it, like a Bloody Mary mix. And it's just a great one to have with chicken and other dishes, with beef. We use it to cook. A little bit goes a long way, but because it's perennial, you don't have to worry about running to the grocery store if you need a little bit of celery or a little bit of that kick and that flavor. But I was over in the Connor garden where we also have lovage one time and had a lady come in, and I heard these 2 ladies talking as I was working at the other end of the garden, and I realized that one of the ladies was in tears, and I came over to see if I could answer any questions or see if there was anything I could help with. And she originally was from Hungary. This is a herb that she grew up with that she had not been able to find in the United States. And so it was like her finding an old friend to see this plant that she had known from her childhood. So those kind of stories are wonderful to me.
Gloria asked, do rhubarb stems have to be red to pull?
No, because different varieties of rhubarb are different colors. You can see this one's green. A lot of the rhubarb that we see in the grocery store is red, but not everything. So it just depends on the variety of rhubarb that you have.
Cool. And can they find out more about gardening on our website?
Yeah,
or?
absolutely. You can find out more about gardening on our website. We have a garden video series that we've done over the past couple of years that you'll find through our website and our YouTube channel. And we will continue that this year as we get the gardens started and work with them through the years. And that's a great way to find out more about what's going on in our gardens. All right, do we want to walk down? And,
yeah.
All right, we're going to walk down and see some of the plants that we've got ready for our heirloom plant sale. As we go, let's talk about what an heirloom is. So we consider an heirloom plant one that has been around for at least 50 years as a variety, one that's open pollinated, so that if we save the seeds, we're going to get the same plant next year when we plant those seeds. We look at, again, things that are appropriate to our time period, and sometimes we have to reach out to other groups to find those seeds. With our Lenape seeds, we reached out to one of our tribal members, and when we had a crop failure with one of our corn varieties, the raccoons and the squirrels got into it. And he happened to have some in his freezer. So we've got it started again, planting in big enough patches that hopefully we can share with the animals, but still have enough for our needs as well. So we've got some of our plants here that we have brought in for our plant sale. Going to move them around to the front of the building. If you've been to our plant sale, we're under a tent. So even if it's raining tomorrow, go ahead and come because you can shop without getting wet. We've got a wide variety of tomatoes and peppers. A few hybrids that are a little unusual, but most of them are heirlooms. And ones that some of them you'll see in our gardens later on, but some of them are just wonderful things to have around. We have a Riesentraub, which is a little kind of grape tomato. It's got great flavor. It's a German tomato. Amish paste, which I like better than Roma's for sauces and pastes. So Abraham Lincoln was one that a few years ago, a guest at the plant sale said, do you have any Abraham Lincolns? And I said, I've not heard of that one. She said, well, my dad always grew it. This is an older lady. And it was always his favorite tomato. So we've looked it up, got the seeds, and we've been able to have it ever since. Now, one of the reasons that we have this wonderful variety of tomatoes is that we had, several years ago, some youth volunteers who worked for us, turns out that their family has a greenhouse. And we are able to order the seeds that we want. I can send the list to them with the seeds and say, I need this many of that plant, this many of that. So we can get tomatoes and peppers that you're not going to find in your local nursery or going to Lowe's or someplace like that. They're a little small this year because of the rain that we've had and the overcast skies, even though they weren't in a greenhouse. But they are wonderful, healthy plants that as it warms up and as we get more rain, they're going to continue to grow and just be beautiful plants. For the ground cherry fans out there, we also do have a few ground cherries. Ground cherries are in the tomato family, almost more closely related to tomatillos. They've got a little sac around them. But these taste fruity and they're wonderful, great plants to have with kids. One of my nieces, when she was younger, said that was her favorite plant in my garden at home. So she loved that. We also have a variety of herbs and scented geraniums. We've got some dahlias. So So there's going to be lots to choose from. In just a little bit, I'm going to go pull some bulbs from storage, some of our cannas. We have a canna called Robert Kemp that dates back to the 1870s, and we will have a few of those bulbs for sale. The pineapple sage right there is great for hummingbirds. They love that red and those tubular flowers. So we'll have our plant sale tomorrow, Friday, from 4 to 7. And as I said, even though it's raining, it's going to be under a tent. Saturday we'll be there from 10 o'clock until the plants are gone.
Carissa asked, are there any plants that would be commonly foraged this time of year while waiting for more garden plants to come in?
Yeah, are there any plants that are commonly foraged? And there are a lot. We have been harvesting the tops of stinging nettles, which are so good for you, full of minerals and vitamins. You just have to be careful picking them because they will sting. But as you cook them, that stinger dissolves. And so that's a great plant this time of year. Of course, dandelions, and a few people on staff have found some mushrooms. One of our staff members has ramp in her garden. She has native plants on her property, and she brought in some ramps to cook. We've got watercress growing down into spring, so there are a lot of things that we are also harvesting that way this time of year as well. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you at the plant sale tomorrow and out in our gardens this summer, because we'll have lots growing. And if you're a gardener, and we'd love to see you come out and see what we have growing in our gardens. Thanks so much.